The year is 2015. The room is large and quiet, full of academics and corporate executives and farmers in clean shirts. This is the annual North American Agronomy Symposium. A young geneticist stands at the podium. Her name is Dr. Anya Sharma. She is brilliant. She is passionate. She is about to change the world of agriculture. On the screen behind her is a slide. It shows a complex series of genetic markers, a double helix rendered in cool blues and greens. She points to a specific sequence, a single line of code in the language of life. This, she says, is the key. This is the marker for a strain of heritage corn, a strain that is uniquely drought-resistant, pest-resistant, and requires almost no nitrogen fertilizer. A murmur goes through the room. It is a miracle seed, the kind of thing companies spend billions trying to engineer. Dr. Sharma clicks to the next slide. It's a picture of a field, lush, green, impossibly healthy. Below the picture, simple white text. Source: Blackwood Creek Farm. Proprietor: Elara Vance. In the third row, an old man sits very still. His name is Arthur Jensen, 86 years old. He wears a suit that is a little too big for him now. He was once the most powerful man in regional agriculture, the gatekeeper for AgriCorp Seed Division. He reads the name on the screen again. Vance, Blackwood Creek Farm. He feels a cold recognition in his chest, a memory from a lifetime ago. A young man, a dusty office, a refusal, a kind refusal, a refusal meant to protect. The room erupts in applause for Dr. Sharma, but Arthur Jensen does not hear it. He is staring at the name on the screen. Elara Vance, daughter of the man he told no, daughter of the man he was certain would fail. He was certain, and certainty, delivered with kindness, is the most profound poison of all. This channel tells the stories of quiet defiance, the stories of those who were told they couldn't, and then did, for decades, in silence. If you believe those stories need to be told, subscribe. Because what happened on that farm is a story about more than just a seed. It's a story about a promise buried in the dirt. Let's go back. The year is 1971, March. The ground is still hard with the memory of winter. Thomas Vance stands in his father's workshop. He is 24 years old. His father has been gone for 6 months. The farm is his now, all 120 acres of it. It's a patchwork farm, a little bit of everything. Corn in the South 40, a small herd of dairy cows, an apple orchard his grandfather planted, a sprawling vegetable garden his mother tends. It is not a modern farm. It is a family farm, held together by work and generational knowledge. Thomas holds a brochure in his hand. Glossy paper, bright colors. AgriCorp, the future of farming. The brochure is for a new seed, a C7 hybrid corn. The yields are astronomical, double what his father ever got. It promises uniformity, efficiency, profit. It is the future, and Thomas knows he needs a piece of it to survive. The banks are already sending letters. The world is changing. He has to change with it. He puts on his good coat, the one he got married in. He drives his father's old Ford pickup into town. The AgriCorp regional office is new, glass and steel. It smells like fresh paint and ambition. Behind a large oak desk sits Arthur Jensen. Mr. Jensen is a pillar of the community. He serves on the church board. He coached Little League for 15 years. His handshake is firm. His smile is genuine. He offers Thomas a cup of coffee. "Thomas," he says, "good to see you, son. Sorry about your father. He was a good man. Thomas nods. Thank you, sir. He slides the brochure across the desk. I'm here about the AC-7. I'd like to place an order for my South 40. Arthur Jensen's smile tightens just a little. He leans back in his chair. He steeples his fingers. It's a thoughtful pose, a concerned pose. Tom, he begins. The AC-7 is a remarkable product. It truly is. But it's not for everyone. Thomas feels a knot in his stomach. What do you mean? Arthur picks up a pen. He starts to sketch on a notepad. This seed, it's a thoroughbred. It needs a specific environment. It requires our specific fertilizer blend. At 3 times the cost of normal fertilizer, it needs our specific pesticide protocol because it has no natural resistance to local blights. It needs at least 200 acres of monoculture to be efficient, to justify the equipment costs. The combine you'd need to harvest it costs more than your whole farm. He looks at Thomas. His eyes are full of sincere concern. Your farm is diverse. It's a good farm, don't get me wrong. Your father was a proud man. But this seed would bankrupt you. I've seen it happen. Good men, good farmers. They get stars in their eyes and they overextend. I can't in good conscience sell you this seed, son. I'm not going to be the man who helps you lose your family's land. The silence in the office is heavy. Thomas looks at the man's kind face, his reasonable logic. There is no anger here, no contempt, just certainty. The absolute certainty of a man who believes he is doing the right thing, who believes he is protecting a young man from his own ambition. Thomas feels something colder than anger. It is the feeling of being erased, of being defined by another man's spreadsheet. He stands up. He pushes his chair in. I understand, he says. His voice is quiet. Arthur stands too. He puts a hand on Thomas's shoulder. You're a good kid, Tom. Stick to what you know. There's no shame in it. Thomas walks out of the glass and steel building. He gets back in his father's old truck. He drives home. He doesn't speed. He doesn't curse. He just drives. He pulls into his yard. His wife, Sarah, comes out onto the porch. She sees his face. She knows. He walks past her into the house. He sits at the kitchen table. He told me no. He said I'd fail. Sarah puts a hand on his shoulder. She doesn't say, he's wrong. She doesn't say, we'll show him. She says something quieter, something more powerful. He doesn't know you, Thomas. He doesn't know your father. He doesn't know this dirt. That night, after Sarah and their young daughter Alara are asleep, Thomas goes out to the barn. He finds a thick burlap feed sack, the kind they don't make anymore. He goes to the seed bins, the ones his grandfather built. Inside is the corn from last year's harvest, open-pollinated, a mix of strains his family had been saving for 50 years. He scoops the kernels into the sack. They feel cool and heavy in his hands, like polished stones. He goes to his father's desk. He takes out a ledger. He begins to write. He describes the seeds, their lineage, their performance in wet years, in dry years. He notes the fields where they grew best, the ones with clay soil, the ones with sandy loam. He fills page after page with his small, neat handwriting. It is a testament, a body of knowledge. He rolls up the ledger and places it in the sack with the seeds. He carries the sack out to the porch. With a shovel, he digs a deep hole under the east post, the one that catches the morning sun first. He places the sack inside. He packs the dirt back on top. He smooths it with his hands. He goes back inside. Sarah is awake, sitting in a chair in the dark. "What did you do?" she asks. He sits on the floor at her feet. He puts his head in her lap. He said we were the past. He said we were obsolete. If they own the future, we have to save the past. He looks up at her. His voice is barely a whisper. The dirt is enough. Sarah runs her fingers through his hair. Yes, she says. The dirt is enough. Thomas Vance did not buy the fancy seed. He could not. So he did something else. He leaned into what Arthur Jensen called his weakness. He embraced diversity. His neighbors to the north and south plowed under their fence rows. They planted AC7 corn from road to road. Their fields were perfect, uniform green carpets. Thomas's farm looked messy by comparison. He didn't just plant corn. He planted beans in the same rows. The beans climbed the corn stalks. They fixed nitrogen in the soil. The corn provided a trellis. It was an old way of farming, a way his grandfather had used. The extension agent told him it was inefficient. You can't harvest that with a modern combine, he said. Thomas replied, I don't own a modern combine. He kept his small apple orchard. He let wildflowers grow between the rows. The flowers attracted beneficial insects, wasps that preyed on the codling moths. His neighbors sprayed expensive pesticides 3 times a season. Thomas sprayed once, sometimes not at all. He kept his small dairy herd. The cows grazed in the pastures. Their manure went onto the fields, a closed loop of fertility. His neighbors bought fertilizer by the ton from Agricorp. Their soil became hard, compacted, lifeless. Thomas's soil grew darker every year. It was rich and full of earthworms. He became a master of selection. Each year at harvest, he would walk his fields. He wasn't looking at the biggest ears of corn. He was looking for the outliers. The plant that survived the dry spell in July. The one the Japanese beetles ignored. The stalk that stood tall in the windstorm. He would tag them with a piece of red yarn. He harvested them by hand, separately. He saved their seeds for the next year. He was not just a farmer, he was a breeder. A geneticist working with sun and soil instead of a laboratory. His work was slow. It was quiet. It was invisible to the outside world. Have you ever had to trust a process that everyone else called foolish? Have you ever had to believe in the long game when everyone else was chasing short-term wins? Let us know in the comments, because what Thomas did next wasn't just about survival. It was about building a different kind of kingdom, a kingdom made of patience and dirt. The first few years were hard. The neighbors with their AC7 corn had massive yields. They bought new tractors, new trucks. They took vacations in the winter. They looked at Thomas with a kind of pity. Good man, Tom, works hard, just stuck in the past. Heard he's planting beans with his corn again, like it's 1930. My boy's FFA project has a better yield than his whole farm. Thomas heard the whispers in town, at the feed store, at the diner. He never said a word. He just paid his bills. He fixed his own equipment. He and Sarah put away a little money every month. Not much, but some. Then came the summer of 1988. Drought. From June to August, the sky was a pale, merciless blue. The fields of AC7 corn began to suffer. The hybrid had been bred for optimal conditions, for perfect water, perfect nutrients. It had no memory of hardship in its genes. The stalks turned yellow. The leaves curled up like old scrolls. The ears were small and stunted. Thomas's fields suffered too. But they endured. His mix of older, diverse strains had a deep genetic library. Some of the plants withered, but others, the descendants of the ones he'd selected in previous dry spells, held on. Their roots went deeper. They knew how to find water. His interplanted beans provided a living mulch, shading the soil, keeping what little moisture there was from evaporating. That fall, the big farms harvested 30 bushels an acre, a catastrophe. Thomas harvested 90, not his best year, but a triumph in a year of failure. He had surplus. Corn prices were sky high. He sold every kernel. In November, his neighbor to the west went bankrupt. The bank put his 120 acres up for auction. Thomas went to the auction. He stood at the back. He bid quietly. He bought the 120 acres. He paid for it in full. Cash. He didn't borrow a dollar. The money he and Sarah had been saving, the money from his surplus corn, it was enough. He now owned 240 acres. Arthur Jensen, retired for 2 years now, read about the sale in the local paper. He felt a flicker of surprise. Good for the boy, he thought. Guess he got lucky with that drought. The pattern began to repeat. Time became a rhythm, a slow drumbeat of vindication. 1993. A new strain of leaf blight swept through the Midwest. It devastated the monoculture crops. The AC-12, the successor to the AC-7, was highly susceptible. AgriCorp's solution was a new, more expensive fungicide. Thomas's corn, with its messy, diverse genetics, was largely unaffected. Some plants got sick, most did not. Genetic diversity was its own immune system. That year, he had the best yields in the county. His other neighbor, the one to the south, struggled. He had taken out a second mortgage to buy the new fungicide. It wasn't enough. The next spring, he sold his 80 acres to Thomas. A quiet, private sale. Cash. Thomas now owned 320 acres. He was no longer a small farmer, but he farmed it the same way. Small. He treated each field as its own ecosystem. He rotated his crops. He planted cover crops in the winter. The soil got richer and richer. 2001. The price of nitrogen fertilizer tripled. Fuel costs went through the roof. The big farms were squeezed. Their margins, always thin, disappeared. They were growing more corn than ever, but they were making less money. Thomas's input costs were almost zero. He made his own fertility. His old tractor sipped diesel. His profit per acre was 5 times that of the megafarms around him. He bought another 150 acres. Cash. He now owned 470 acres. He hired his first full-time employee, a young man from the next town over. He taught the young man how to walk the fields, how to look for the outliers, how to save seeds. Arthur Jensen, now in his late 70s, would sometimes drive the county roads. He'd pass the old Vance place. It wasn't the old Vance place anymore. It was just the Vance place. And it was huge. The fields were not the perfect, uniform green of the AgriCorp farms. They were a tapestry of different shades, full of life. He saw the new grain bins, the new barn, all built without a single loan. He heard the talk. Tom Vance was becoming a legend, the man who farmed the old way and was beating everyone. Arthur felt a feeling he couldn't quite name. It wasn't regret, not yet. It was a deep, unsettling confusion, a crack in the foundation of his certainty. Thomas Vance passed away in the spring of 2010. He was 63 years old. He died in his own bed, looking out the window at the apple orchard in full bloom. The whole county came to his funeral. The farmers he had helped, the young people he had mentored, even the executives from the local AgriCorp office. They spoke of his integrity, his quiet strength, his wisdom. No one mentioned the meeting in 1971. It was a forgotten story, a footnote. The The farm passed to his daughter, Ilara. She had her father's quiet nature and her mother's sharp eyes. She had gone to college, earned a degree in agronomy. She knew the science behind what her father had done by instinct. She had worked for a few years at the university, but the farm always called her home. She and her husband moved back into the old farmhouse. They were committed to continuing her father's work. One rainy afternoon, she was cleaning out his workshop, a place she hadn't touched since he died. It was full of his old ledgers, decades of notes on weather, yields, soil health. In the back of a drawer, she found a small, leather-bound journal. It was from 1971, her father's first year running the farm. She read about his struggles, his hopes, and then she found the entry about his meeting with Arthur Jensen. She read her father's account of the kind, firm refusal. On the next page, there was a single, cryptic entry, dated the following night, under the East Porch post. For you, Ilara, the dirt is enough. Ilara felt a chill. She called her husband. They went to the porch with shovels. The wood was old and weathered. They found the east post. They started to dig. About 3 feet down, the shovel hit something soft, but solid. They cleared away the dirt. It was a burlap sack, incredibly well preserved in the dense clay soil. They lifted it out. It was heavy. They carried it into the barn and laid it on a clean tarp. Ilara carefully untied the twine at the top. It crumbled in her fingers. She reached inside. The first thing she touched was paper. She pulled out a rolled-up ledger. It was the one her father had written that night in 1971. His handwriting was still clear, a blueprint for survival. Then she reached in again. Her hand closed around a handful of corn kernels. They were dry, smooth, perfect, a time capsule. Seeds from a world before patents, before hybrids designed for chemical dependency. Seeds that held the memory of 100 harvests. Ilara sat on the floor of the barn. She held the seeds in her palm. She finally understood. Her father hadn't just been a good farmer, he had been a revolutionary. He hadn't just been saving his own farm, he had been saving an idea. The idea that a farmer could be free, free from debt, free from dependency, free to work with nature, not against it. She looked at the sack, a buried treasure, not of gold, but of something far more valuable, potential. Ilara didn't just plant the seeds. She partnered with her old professors at the university. She had the genetics sequenced. They were astonished. The seeds contained a library of traits that had been lost to modern agriculture. Genes for drought tolerance, for disease resistance, for nutrient efficiency. It was a genetic gold mine. Dr. Anya Sharma, then a promising graduate student, was assigned to the project. She and Ilara became collaborators, friends. They spent 5 years working with the seeds, isolating the best traits, crossbreeding them with modern high-yield varieties. They weren't creating a locked, patented hybrid. They were creating new, open-pollinated strains, seeds that farmers could save and adapt to their own land, just as her father had done. This work led to the presentation in 2015, to the room full of academics and executives, to the slide with Ilara's name on it. After the applause died down, after Dr. Sharma was surrounded by well-wishers, a frail, elderly man made his way to the edge of the stage. He looked up at Ilara. It was Arthur Jensen. Ilara recognized him from old photographs. He looked smaller than she imagined. His certainty was gone, replaced by a quiet fragility. "Miss Vance," he said. His voice was thin. Ilara nodded. "Mr. Jensen." He took a slow, rattling breath. "Your father, Thomas. He came to see me in 1971. He wanted to buy our AC7 seed. Alara said nothing. She just waited. I told him no, Arthur said. I told him I was protecting him. I showed him the numbers. I explained with perfect logic why his farm would fail if he used our product. I was so sure I was right. I was so sure I was being kind. He looked down at his own trembling hands, then back up at her. He didn't need my protection. He needed my respect. I was a good man, Miss Vance. I truly believed I was helping. But I was wrong. The room was emptying out. They were almost alone. This was the moment, the reckoning her father never got. Alara could have said 1,000 things. She could have reminded him of the decades of struggle, the quiet humiliation, the loneliness of being right when the whole world thinks you're wrong. But she looked at the old man, and she saw not a villain, but a monument to the danger of good intentions. She thought of her father, his quiet strength, his lack of bitterness. She gave the only answer he would have wanted her to give, a quiet, devastating truth. He knew, she said. He just wished you had. Arthur Jensen closed his eyes. A single tear traced a path through the wrinkles on his cheek. He nodded slowly, and turned, and walked away. The story doesn't end there. It grows, like the seeds her father saved. In 2016, Alara Vance officially established the Thomas Vance Heritage Seed Bank. It is housed in a new, climate-controlled building on the farm, but its spirit is in the open air. It is a non-profit. It offers heritage seeds free of charge to any farmer who requests them. The only condition is that they return a small portion of their saved seeds at the end of the season. To keep the bank alive, to keep the genetics evolving. The first year, they supplied seeds to 20 local farms. By 2020, they were supplying over 500 farms across the country. The legacy rule is this: what you build for others outlasts what you build for yourself. The script details the ripples. A young farmer in Nebraska, about to lose her family's land, uses Vance seeds to transition to low-input organic. By her third year, she's profitable. A cooperative of vegetable growers in California uses Vance-bred tomatoes to survive a record drought. University studies are published. Agricultural policy begins to shift. The value of genetic diversity is no longer a niche idea. It is becoming mainstream. All because one man was told no, and decided to create his own yes. A yes he buried in the ground for his daughter to find. Today, if you visit Blackwood Creek Farm, Alara will show you the seed bank, the climate-controlled rooms, the rows of carefully labeled jars, the hum of computers tracking genetic data. But the heart of the place is not there. It's in the old barn. Hanging on the wall of her office is a simple wooden frame. Behind the glass is a weathered, stained piece of burlap, the original feed sack. Sometimes, at the end of a long day, Alara will stand before it. She'll place her hand on the glass. She'll remember the smell of the earth when they dug it up, the feel of those first seeds in her palm, a promise kept, a legacy that is still growing. The most dangerous limitation is never the one shouted in anger. It is the one whispered with concern, the one delivered by a good person who is absolutely certain they know your limits, the one that tells you not that you are bad, but that you are not enough. Right now, somewhere in the world, a young person with a new idea is being told no, not out of malice, but out of a genuine, well-intentioned desire to protect them from failure. A boss, a teacher, a parent, a friend. This story is for them. The dirt is enough. The work is enough. You are enough. If this story means something to you, share it with someone who needs to hear that message. Someone fighting a quiet battle. Someone proving the doubters wrong, one day at a time. Because these are the stories that remind us of what is possible. When we refuse to let the world tell us who we are, and decide, instead, to grow.